Okay, guys, so today we're going to work through a few more questions. Please give me your input. If you've got any questions, please ask them. That's why we're here. We're going to read through it slowly. I'm going to show you how to look at the questions and how to answer them. Okay, so the first question says, the boxes show some parts of plants and the function of the parts. Draw a line from each part to match its function. So the flower, will the function be photosynthesis, absorption of water, transport of water and minerals, or reproduction? Anyone? I can't see your name, so I'm not going to guess every time. Let's just work on there at the bottom where all your faces are. Let's go from left to right and then back left and left to right, and let's work it through like that. So I think, Claudia, you should then start.
The flower is for reproduction.
Well done. Okay, then you're going to draw your line. Please make sure that the line is drawn with a ruler. Okay, if it's not a ruler that you're using and the lines are all skewed, they're going to subtract marks for that. Okay, very important here. Please read through all the functions before you make your choice. Sometimes some of the functions might be similar for things, and if you haven't looked at everything, you might choose the wrong one. Okay. Then the leaf, will that be for photosynthesis, absorption of water, or transport of water and minerals? Next person. Guys, I can't see your names. Please just continue. Who's next? Jalen? Will the leaf be responsible for photosynthesis, or is the leaf going to absorb water, or is the leaf going to transport water and minerals?
It's going to transport the transport of water and minerals.
Okay, let's have a look at the other ones first. The roots, what will the roots do? The next person.
The roots will transport the water into the plant.
Okay, so which one of the options will it be? Is it going to transport water and minerals, or is it going to absorb water, or is it going to photosynthesize?
Sorry, you broke up.
Choose the correct option. So is it going to photosynthesize, absorb of water, or transport water and minerals?
Absorption of water.
Yes, the roots will absorb the water from the soil. Okay, then when we get to the stem then takes that water and the minerals to the rest of the plant. So the stems are responsible for transport of water and minerals. And then when we get to the leaves, remember the leaves are green, which means they're going to photosynthesize. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay, so if you think in terms of your plant, you've got the roots, which is going to absorb the water that's needed for photosynthesis, as well as the minerals. Then, how will it get to the rest of the plant? What's in between? The stems. Okay, so the stems is going to take the water and the minerals everywhere in the plant that they need it. The leaves are green, they're going to absorb the sunlight and the chemical process of photosynthesis happens inside the leaf, where they then produce the sugars or the glucose. Okay, then your stems once again will transport that glucose back to the other parts of the plant. Okay, and then when you've got your flowers, what is the flowers for? That's purely reproduction. Does that make sense? Has anyone got any questions? Okay, then next question. Complete the equation or the word equation for photosynthesis. This is very important. They tell you they want the word equation. You get a chemical equation where, for instance, if you've got carbon dioxide, the chemical would be CO2. 2, but the 2 is the small one. I can't do that on this document. Okay, that's not what they want. They want the word equation. Okay, so carbon dioxide plus what is going to give us glucose plus what? Okay, so somebody answered here. Just say again. Water gives us glucose and what?
Oxygen.
And oxygen. Well done. Very good. Okay, then plants and green algae need mineral salts to grow. One mineral salt is magnesium sulfate. Tarek and Marwa, I'm sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly, okay? Investigate the growth of algae. They put different concentrations of magnesium sulfate solution into 5 flasks, which they call A, B, C, D, and E. And then they add the algae, okay? So yeah, we've got the 5 flasks, A, B, C, D, and E. Then they take 10 square centimeters, or the centimeters, sorry, now my tongue is not working. Okay, so centimeters cube, okay, and that's the same as measuring your liquids, okay. So that's going to go into the millimeters and all of that, okay? But that's just for interest's sake. So they take 10 centimeters cube of algae and they put that into each one of these flasks, okay? And then from what we've read here, it says that they put different concentrations of the magnesium sulfate in each one of these containers, okay? Why did Tarek and Marwa put 10 centimeters cube of algae into each one of the flasks? Any suggestions? Who should answer next? Okay, has anyone got an idea there?
Sorry, can I just...
Okay, sorry, now a few of you spoke together.
Sorry. What was in the flask? What were in the different flasks?
What's in the different flasks?
Yes, in those flasks.
There's different concentrations of magnesium sulfate that they've put in there. And then into each one of those different concentrations, they put 10 centimeters cube of algae. Okay, so if you go on to the questions further, you can see that the first flask has the concentration of magnesium sulfate is 1, number B is 2 parts, number 3 is C parts, number 4 is 4 parts, and number E is 5 parts. Okay, 1 being the most dilute and 5 being the most concentrated. Okay, so different concentrations of magnesium sulfate, that's the liquid that you're seeing, and then they put 10 centimeters cube of algae. Okay, algae is plants, algae are green. If you've got a swimming pool at home and you don't put the chemicals in the swimming pool, what happens to the water? It turns green. That's algae that's growing in the water. It's plants. Okay. The chemicals kill the plants. Now we're putting these plants in the different concentrations of magnesium sulfate to see what concentration of magnesium sulfate is best for plant growth and what concentration is the worst, basically. Okay. Because the more plant growth or the more growth is going to happen, the more green we'll see in there. Okay, because then they'll reproduce. Okay, so why is it important that there's 10 centimeters cube of algae put into each one of these flasks?
In order to see the different results of the same amount of algae.
Yes, so what you want to achieve in this question is whenever you're doing an experiment, it's very important that there should only be one variable that has different values. Okay, variables are all the things that have an impact on an experiment. Okay, so if we had different concentrations of magnesium sulfate and different volumes of algae, will the results be trustworthy? No, because if we put different amounts of algae into a concentration of 1 and into a concentration of 4, then what's making the difference? Was it the different amount of algae or was it the different concentrations of magnesium sulfate? Okay, so whenever you're doing an experiment, it's very important that there's only one variable in that experiment that should have different values. Okay, in this case, it's different concentrations of magnesium sulfate. So everything else in this experiment, we want to keep the same. So we want the same amount of algae in all the flasks. If they ask you a question of how you can improve this experiment to give more accurate results, you can mention things like you're keeping all the flasks at the same temperature. And anything else that might have an influence on this. So you want all other factors that might impact this to be kept constant and the same. Does that make sense to you guys? Okay. Then they ask, why did they leave the flasks for 5 days before they had a look at the results? The next person. So why didn't they throw it in and look at the results immediately? Yes, plants take time to grow. Okay, so the moment they put in the algae, that algae now first has to cope with whatever is surrounding it. And if it was a good, or if it was a optimum concentration of magnesium sulfate, that means that there would be a lot of algae growth. If it was a magnesium concentration that's not good for plant growth, then the algae might even start to die. Okay, so we have to give it time so that the algae can adjust and that can grow. Okay, so just give it time for the algae to grow. Any questions? Okay, here are the results. So in flask A, B, C, D, and E, the concentrations of magnesium sulfate was 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. 1 being the most diluted, 5 being the most concentrated. Then the color of the algae. They tell us that on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 is the lightest green color, 10 is the darkest green color. Okay, so then they show us that flask 1, which was the most dilute one. Who can tell me what does dilute mean and what does concentrated mean? Anyone?
Dilute is like weaker. Concentrated is like you're stronger. Like if you're talking about acid, dilute acid would be a weaker acid.
Well done, very good. Okay, so in simple terms, if you have 2 glasses of water, okay, in the one glass you put 1 spoon of sugar and you mix it up. In the other glass, you put 4 spoons of sugar and you mix it up. The diluted solution is the one with only the 1 sugar in it. The more concentrated sugar solution is the one with the 4 sugars in it. Okay, does that make sense to all of you? Okay, so in this case, the 1 would be the least magnesium in it. Number 5 has the most magnesium in it. If we look at the color scale, 1 is the lightest color, 10 is the darkest color. Then if we have a look, so the dilute solution had a color of 4. Then number 2, it goes to 5. Number 3, it goes to 8. So can you see that it increases up to 10?
Yeah.
And then when we get to number E, then it goes back to 1. So then it's a very light color again. Okay. They say complete the sentence. Okay. So they started a sentence. You need to complete that sentence. To describe. They ask you to describe the pattern of the results. So, and describe means tell what you see. Okay, they're not asking you to explain it. So don't give reasons for it. Just explain what you're seeing. Tell me what you're seeing. Okay. As the concentration of magnesium sulfate increases from 1 to 5, the color of the algae, what's going to happen to it? It's getting darker, yes. But can you see that this is for 2 marks? Okay, that would only give you 1 mark because you haven't finished the results, describing the results. So now you have to describe this section. Who wants to do this? Who's next in line? Guys, can someone just answer, please? Okay, Claudia, you go.
Okay, well, somebody said that it increases when it's darker, but then there's also that anomalous result of the one being lighter. So there's an increase, but then there's a decrease.
Okay, but they're not asking you for any reasons here. Remember that. Okay, so you've said that as the concentration of magnesium sulfate increases from 1 to 5, the color of the algae goes darker from 4 to 10. Okay, because that's what we can see. So it goes darker from 4 to 10. Then you tell me, in flask E, where the magnesium goes to 5, the color becomes very light green again. Okay, they just want you to tell them what you're seeing. Okay. When the color of the algae is dark green, it has grown the most. Okay, so now they tell us the darker the green color, that means there was more growth of algae. So complete the sentence again, but this time choose a word from the below list. So they give us carbon dioxide, fastest, the same, slowest, sugar, and water. Now let's read the sentence. When the concentration of magnesium sulfate is 4, the algae growth, carbon dioxide, or the algae growth fastest, the algae grow the same, the algae grow slowest, the algae grow sugar, or the algae grow water? Well done, very good. The diagram shows some apparatus used to investigate photosynthesis. Okay, if they give you this, please have a look at the drawing that they give you. That's very important because lots of times the answer of questions that follow the drawing is sometimes contained within the drawing. They're actually giving you the answers there, but the students tend to not look properly at the drawing or at the labels, and then they miss it. Okay, so look at your drawing. They gave us a glass tub or container or whatever with an inverted funnel. Underneath it there's a water weed. Then there's a measuring tube with a stopper at the top, and it shows us that gas is given off. We can see there's measuring units there as well. Over here it's put onto little things so the water can go underneath it. Okay, and they tell us that this is a glass funnel, so light will be able to enter it. Does this look familiar at all? Thinking about the experiments that you did for those of you that have done grade 8. Yeah, this makes us think of determining whether it's oxygen that's produced. Hey, it looks very similar. Okay, now they tell us the water weed was exposed to 3 different intensities of light. Okay, so 3 different light intensities, each of the same length of time. So each of those light intensities, they were probably exposed to, let's say, for 10 minutes or for half an hour or for an hour. So the same time for each one of those 3. The gas produced at each light intensity was analyzed then. Okay, so then they've taken the gas that was produced during that section of photosynthesis, and they had that analyzed. Sorry guys, my tongue keeps on twisting this morning. The results are shown in the table below. Okay, so they show us the percentage of gas for the light intensity units of 1, 8, and 24. So in a light intensity of 1, the oxygen was 19, carbon dioxide 1, nitrogen gas was 80%. Remember, this is percentage gas. Okay, the light intensity units were 8, then the oxygen was 30%, carbon dioxide 0%, nitrogen 70%. When the light intensity was 24 units, the oxygen was 40%, the carbon dioxide was 0%, the nitrogen was 60%. Now they ask, what happened to the percentage of carbon dioxide when the light intensity was increased from 1 to 8 units? Okay, so now we have a look, 1 to 8 units, they want to know percentage of carbon dioxide. So we're having a look at those two. What happened? Decreased. Well done. They're not asking you for explanations, nothing. So you simply state that it decreased. What happened to the percentage of oxygen when the light intensity was increased from units 1 to 8? So again, 1 to 8. This time we're working with oxygen though. So what happened? It increased. Well done. Explain. So now we get to the part of explaining these things. Explain why the percentage of carbon dioxide and oxygen changed as the light intensity increased. So as light intensity increased, the oxygen, it should be this way around. The oxygen increased and the carbon dioxide, no man. Sorry guys. Now I should do this one. So the carbon dioxide decreased. Okay, now explain why. So why the more light intensity, the more oxygen and the less carbon dioxide. Who wants to go ahead and explain that for me? It's for 3 marks.
Well, during the process of photosynthesis, it would produce more oxygen than the carbon dioxide.
Okay, does photosynthesis produce carbon dioxide at all?
It produces oxygen.
No, it produces oxygen. What does photosynthesis do with carbon dioxide?
It uses it to produce oxygen.
Yes. Okay. So you need to state clearly in your answer that this is the process of photosynthesis that's happening. Then you need to state that the carbon dioxide will decrease because that is used in the process of photosynthesis. So the more photosynthesis, the more carbon dioxide is used. Okay, then you also need to state that oxygen is produced during photosynthesis. So the more photosynthesis, the more oxygen will be produced. Okay, does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay. Hummingbirds feed on cactus flowers, as you can see over here. There's the hummingbird, here's the cactus. Cactus plants live in very dry areas and they have special adaptations to this habitat. Describe two of these adaptations and explain how they help the cactus plant to survive. So what you need to mention two adaptations to remember we're talking about the cactus plant living in very dry areas, okay? The adaptations has to do with this dryness and they want you to describe two of these adaptations. So first you're going to list the adaptation and then how it helps this cactus plant to survive this condition. Okay, let's see. Michael Jean, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, you're going to answer this one for us.
Okay. The first adaptation is it has a fibrous root, which means it can take up whatever water it can get.
Okay, fibrous root, you say.
It has thorns to protect the water that it did get.
Okay, just go back to the first one. You said a fibrous root. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, rather than saying a fibrous root, I would rather say that it's got a very shallow root system. Because being in a desert, there's not really rain. Okay, so either the roots needs to go very deep into the soil so they can reach the underwater table, or it needs to be very close to the surface so that they can actually absorb any condensation that happens overnight on the sand. Okay, so that's got more to do with the roots. Okay, what was the second point?
The second point is that the leaves formed thorns, which means it protects itself from predators.
Okay, very good. But you're mixing up two things there. Yes, you can add that it assists with the protection from predators, but we say that the leaves are reduced to spines, and the main reason of that is then it decreases water loss. Remember, the more surface area you have, the more water can be lost to the atmosphere. Okay, so you would have gotten your mark. I just want to focus your attention on reduced leaves to spines. Normally has to do with water loss and then the protection of the plant. Okay, so well done. You would have gotten probably, this would be, okay, this is for 2 marks, so you would definitely have gotten 1 mark. The first adaptation, you needed to give me a little bit more detail there. Okay. Let me just quickly see. Yeah. Louisa, you very quiet. Tell me what do you think? Is there anything extra you would add here?
No, I don't really know what to add.
Okay. Jalen, have you got anything to add?
No.
Claudia?
I don't know if that's related, but I would say that its surface is shiny so it can reflect light and will absorb more water.
Yeah. Yeah, that can work. That can work. That can work. Shay, have you got anything else? Okay, what you guys could also mention is that desert plants normally have the oh, sorry, now I've got a loss of words. The stomata. Now the stomata is the openings from which the plant will lose water. Okay, so the stomata is sunken in desert plants. Okay, and the stomata also may be closed during the day, which prevents water loss, and then they will only open at night. Now, the stomata has two functions. Yes, it's going to let the water out of the plant, okay, but it also absorbs carbon dioxide, which is needed for photosynthesis. So the stomata needs to be open at some point. But what can happen in a desert plant is during the very hot hours of the day, that stomata can close up to prevent water being lost. Okay, so that's just to add. Anything else from you guys or any questions? Okay. The hummingbirds are adapted to feed on this cactus flowers. Describe one adaptation and explain how it helps the hummingbird to feed. Jalen, what adaptation will the hummingbird have? You want to have a look at it? Here's your hummingbird. What adaptation does a hummingbird have to survive or to feed on those flowers specifically?
The cactus flower.
Sorry, I couldn't hear.
Cactus flower.
Sorry, Jalen, you're breaking up. I just hear cactus flower. What adaptation does the hummingbird have in order to feed on this flower? Have a look at it. Have a look at this beak. Is it a short beak?
Can I ask that?
Sorry, let me just see what's going on here. Who spoke now?
Louisa.
Yes, Louisa.
Can I answer?
Yes, go ahead.
The hummingbird has a very long beak, so then he can feed on the cactus flower and he can't get hurt by the thorns.
Well done. Very good. There's another adaptation. If you have a look at it here, is it sitting on anything? No. So what hummingbirds also do is they can hover. Do you know what hover is?
Yes.
Okay, so hover is like what a helicopter can do. So they can be in the air but standing in one place basically. Okay, so hummingbirds have the ability to do that. So they clap their wings very, very fast and they have the ability to hover right in front of that flower and not have to sit down like the other birds. Because if you think about, what can we think about? What other birds? If you think about, what other birds feed from nectar? I'm trying to think now. I'm a blank. Sorry, let me just quickly have a look. Your sugar birds, although they do the hovering as well.
Some birds eat from nectar, honey.
Yeah. Your sunbirds and the. Okay, but let's. Okay, the Cape White Eyes. Do you guys know Cape White Eyes? Okay, but there's other birds that can also feed on nectar. They would all have a long beak, but not necessarily all be able to hover. So the hummingbird has got this very special adaptivity to be able to hover so that it doesn't need to sit down on a twig or a leaf or somewhere. Okay, so there's two adaptations with regards to the hummingbird. The first and the most important one is the beak, and the second one is being able to hover. But it doesn't matter, you could have mentioned anyone. Okay, next question. And sorry for all the photosynthesis questions here. As you can see, it's obviously important, but there's very limited past papers available. So I had to deal with what I've got because I can't give you the questions that you're going to get now in the exams. So and unfortunately, photosynthesis was some of the main questions that I could get hold of. So this doesn't mean that this is the only thing that's important. Unfortunately, this is just what I could get my hands on. Okay, So photosynthesis takes place in green leaves. Then they show us there's a little twig and a leaf. They show us water going in, glucose going out, carbon dioxide going in, oxygen coming out. Complete the word equation once again for photosynthesis. Use the information in the diagram to help you. Okay, so what would you have here? Let me see. Jalen.
Carbon dioxide.
Plus? Plus the water, yes, will give you what? Glucose and? Oxygen. Well done. Which of these statements are correct? Okay. Guys, whenever you see something like this is basically almost like a multiple choice question, okay? You don't have those in the exams that you get now. You will when you go on to IGCSE. Then there's a whole paper just of multiple choice questions. Very important, read through all the different options and then you go and make your choice. Okay, so they tell you to tick the boxes with the 2 correct statements. So they're telling you there's 2 that's correct. Go and look for that 2. Okay, all plants carry out photosynthesis. Is that correct? All plant cells carry out photosynthesis. No, because roots can't photosynthesize, they never see the sun. Okay, all animal cells carry out photosynthesis. Is that correct?
No.
No, I wish I could photosynthesize and produce some energy. Okay, photosynthesis is carried out by producers. Is that correct? Yes, producers of plants. So well done. Photosynthesis takes place in chloroplasts. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes, because chloroplast is the green pigment that's going to absorb the sunlight. Photosynthesis is the same as respiration. Is that correct?
No.
No. Respiration is the chemical process that is exactly the opposite of photosynthesis. In respiration, that's how cells are going to produce energy. You don't have to know all of that now, just know what it's about. Respiration is where the cells produce energy, and then it's exactly the opposite. So when they produce energy, they use glucose and oxygen in order to give off carbon dioxide, water, and energy. Okay. Next question. Sorry, have you guys got any questions?
No.
Okay. Thomas knows light is needed for photosynthesis. He wants to find out what happens to photosynthesis in different colors of light. And he uses this experiment. So the one he has, you can see all of them has a water plant. All of them has a funnel, so it's channeling all the gases given off. And then the gases go here into the top inverted test tubes where they can then measure bubbles or whatever. Okay, this one receives blue light. This experiment receives red light. This experiment receives green light. Bubbles of gas are produced during photosynthesis. By this time, all of you should know this. Okay. Thomas counts the number of bubbles produced in a minute. Okay. So he's going to count them. And how does he count them? How many bubbles per minute? Here's the results of what he found. So for the different colored lights, in blue light, he counted 95 bubbles. In red light, 70 bubbles. In the green light, 10 bubbles. How could Thomas make his results more reliable? Remember what I said when we did that first experiment with the magnesium? I said to you, in an experiment, there should only be one factor that has different values. The rest must be kept the same and kept constant. That's how you make results reliable. Okay, keep that in mind. So the factor that is different here is the colors of light. So how could Thomas make his results more reliable?
By choosing one color of light.
Sorry, just say again, by choosing?
By choosing a specific color of light.
No, because that is the factor that is changing. If they want to know how to make it more reliable, you have to specify everything else that you want to keep the same, because they haven't mentioned anything else in here, have they?
No.
So you now mentioning all the stuff that has to be kept the same. Or what you can mention is how you will control measuring this per minute. So for instance, you can say that you need to use a stopwatch when counting these so that you make sure that your minutes is exactly minutes and that the time is not wrong. Okay, what else? Any other suggestions? Think about photosynthesis. What has an influence of photosynthesis? We're having...
The amount of light that is given off.
Sorry, just say again.
The amount of light that is given off by the light bulbs.
Okay, so the light intensity.
Yes.
How strong the light is. Yes, so you tell me that you need to make sure that the light intensity at each of these different colors of light is the same. Perfect. What else has an influence on photosynthesis? Now we've looked at light. What other factors influence photosynthesis? Whether these plants have the same amount of water, but that's not really applicable in this experiment because they're submerged in water. Am I right? Okay, so the water one won't do. What's the other thing that's needed for photosynthesis? Carbon dioxide. So make sure that the plants have the same concentration of carbon dioxide, or that you give them enough carbon dioxide so that there's not too little carbon dioxide. Okay, and when you did your experiments, you would see that you can add calcium carbonate into the water, and that would increase the carbon dioxide concentration. Okay, then there's another factor. What makes the plant green? What do we call that? Okay, if you have a plant that is sick and it's yellow in color, is it going to photosynthesize as it should? No. So make sure that you've got healthy green plants. Okay, so please make sure when you do these experiments, or when they ask you to, how can you improve on this? Think about all the factors that could influence this process. Photosynthesis, so what is all the things that's needed for photosynthesis? Okay, go and stabilize those. Make sure if this was pot plants, then you would water all the plants before the experiment and you would give them all the same amount of water. You make sure the carbon dioxide concentration is the same and that there's enough. You make sure that it's a healthy green plant. Then the plant has everything that it needs, and then you can then the only factor that could have a influence on this activity or this photosynthesis is the color of the light. Okay. Does that make sense to you all?
Yes.
Okay, draw a bar chart to show Thomas's results. Okay, so you're very lucky here because they already tell you that it's a bar chart you need to draw. Okay, lots of times they won't tell you what type of chart it is. They will just say draw a chart to show the results. Okay, now when we're drawing a chart, They've already given you the paper. Now there's a few things you have to look at. You start with your table that they've given you. Okay. Firstly, you have to determine which one of these is going to be the dependent factor and which ones will be the independent factor, because depending on what's dependent and what's independent, that will tell us what needs to go onto the x-axis or what needs to go onto the y-axis. Okay, now dependent and independent. Think about the words. If you are a dependent child, then you can function on your own. You can do stuff on your own. Your parents can trust you and tell you, you need to wash the car, and when they come home tonight, then you were dependable and you washed the car. Does that make sense? Can you see the relation? So dependable, it's you can function on your own. Independable means no, I'm lying to you. Oh, sorry. Independable is if you're independent, you can stand on your own. Okay, sorry, I mixed this up. Sorry. Okay, independable, you can stand on your own. If you're dependable, you depend on others. Okay, so the dependable one is going to differ according to whatever is given in the independent one. So the one that's independent or predetermined or standing alone on its own, that's not going to change, what would that be? Would that be the color of the light or the number of bubbles? The color of the light. That's the independent one. The one that's standing on its own. Remember, when you start planning your experiment, you say, we are going to use blue light, red light, and green light. No matter what else happens in this experiment, nothing's going to change that. Okay, so that's independent, standing on its own. Okay, then dependent is the number of bubbles, because that's going to depend on the color that was used. So this one depends on whatever results we have here, or whatever values we've got here. Okay, now the independent one always goes onto the y-axis. Oh, sorry, the x-axis. Okay, then your dependent one goes onto the y-axis. Okay, the x-axis is the horizontal one. And the y-axis is the vertical one. Okay, so in here, the color of light would be here on your x-axis, and you will also see that you can take this exact table heading and use that as a label for your axis. Okay, so the x-axis, color of the light, is exactly the same. On the y-axis, we'll have number of bubbles of gas in a minute. Okay. Now, we know that this is a bar graph. Now, you need to know, if they did not tell you this was a bar graph, the fact that they're giving you words here and not figures, so not numbers, needs to tell you immediately this is a bar graph. Okay, if this was numbers and that is numbers, then it's always a line graph. So the fact that they give you words means that it's a bar graph. If you know how to draw your bar graphs, then you need to know that the bars are not allowed to touch. So the first one, let me just see here, it's blue, red, and green. Okay, so the first one is blue. Ooh. Then you need to leave the same amount of space open. Then you've got red, same amount of space open. Then you've got green. Okay. Then if you have a look at the number of bubbles of gas in a minute, we're dealing with 95, 70, and 10. So there's fives in it. So if we're working out the scale that we're going to use now, it might be a good idea to count in fives on our scale. Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
Counting in tens means that you need to work on half a line, whereas we can use each and every line and do that as a count of 5. Okay, so this one will be 5, 10. Okay, I'm just going to do the big ones now, and then you'll know that in between it's 15, 20. It's just because it's going to take me a long time now. Okay, and that's 100. Okay, let's erase this one. Okay, so either yours can look like this. You can only do 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 up to 100, or you can do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, and so on. Okay, when you do this scale, it's very important that the difference between each of the numbers is the same. So in other words, the difference between 0 and 10 is 10 units. The difference between 10 and 20 is 10 units. The difference between 20 and 30 is 10 units. Okay. For instance, I do get students that will literally, the values given here is 10, 70, and 95. And all they do is they go and they write here on the first line, they go 10. On the second one, they go 70. And on the third one, they go 95. Okay, if we draw this graph, is this going to be an accurate result?
No.
No, this is a scale. This needs to flow into one another. The same difference between the numbers, the same distances between every number. Okay, so this is not allowed at all. Okay, please never, never do this. You're not going to get any marks. So do your scale properly. Okay, so now we've got the different values. We know that it's bars that we need to draw. So now we go back and we say blue is 95. Okay, so here's 95. Sorry. So now we're going to draw the blue graph. Come on. The blue bar, which is going to look like that. The red bar goes up to 70. Okay, so then you leave 2 lines open. Here's 70. Okay, so there's your red one. Sorry, this line should be a little bit out. Okay. And then the last one is the green, and that value is 10. Okay, so then we draw the green bar, and that's 10. Okay, do you guys have any questions here?
No.
Does this make sense?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. What conclusion can you make from this result? Okay, a conclusion is what is the end result that you get to basically. So this is the results that we've seen. Okay, so obviously the number of gas is going to be equal to the amount of photosynthesis that took place. Am I right? So the more gas being released, the more there was photosynthesis. Okay, so now we know that the blue light released the most bubbles, and the red light was in between, and the green light released the least bubbles. So what conclusion can we come to if we look at this? Anyone that wants to take a chance? Come on, guys. Try.
The blue light is superior. It makes more bubbles. The green makes
Sorry, just say again. The blue light makes more?
bubbles and the green makes the least.
Okay. But what did we say is the relation between making more bubbles? So there's more what taking place?
More photosynthesis.
Yes. Okay. So, sorry, let me just get back here. Okay, so what conclusion can be reached from this? The blue light had the most photosynthesis and released the most bubbles. Or the green light had the least bubbles and the least photosynthesis. Okay, so more photosynthesis took place under the blue light than any of the others, and the least photosynthesis under the green light. Is this making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, now use your knowledge about the color of leaves to explain this. Now they want a reason for this, okay? And they say, they give you a hint. They tell you, think about the color of leaves. What color is leaves? Green. Okay, green is the one that had the least photosynthesis. So if the green light comes there, there's the least photosynthesis. What, and now you won't find this answer in any book. Okay, so you have to work with the information they've given you and think, what could the reason be? They're giving you a hint. If it's the green color of the leaves, showed the least photosynthesis. Anyone?
Green is not attracted by green.
Okay, so if it's not attracted, then it's, if you think of the light, then it would probably be reflected. Yeah. So the green leaves does not absorb the green light. It reflects the green light. But the green leaves will absorb the red or the blue light. Okay. Can you see how this falls in place?
Yes.
Okay, any questions?
No.
Okay. Sexual reproduction in flowering plants involves several stages. Sorry guys, this was just for 1 mark. So you just had to give me that the blue light is absorbed or that the green light is reflected. I have to see that you grasp the concept there in order to give you the 1 mark. Okay, and if you get a question like this in the exam and you don't have a clue, because I looked at your faces and I don't know, it just seemed to have struck a nerve there. You guys were all quite pale in the face actually. Okay, don't think about it like that. Okay, have a look at what they give you and try to reason out. Try to think logically. Cambridge loves doing this. Okay, they want you to think logically. They give you information and then you need to think for yourself about how's this all going to fit together. Okay, and you can come up with whatever reason you want to. If you can support the reason that you're giving, they'll give you the mark. If you can support it and that support is valid, so if you've got a valid reason, then they'll give you the mark, even though your answer is not on their memo. If it's a valid reason, they'll give you the mark. So you guys need to start thinking out of the box a little bit. Okay, it's not this bad at checkpoint level. Okay, so up to grade 9. From grade 10, there's a whole paper. You write 3 papers, and one of those papers are all on experiments and all about thinking for yourselves. Okay, so you have to start getting into that rhythm of thinking out of the box. Okay. Sorry, let's continue on to the next question. So, the sexual reproduction in flowering plants involves several stages. There's seed dispersal, fertilization, pollination, and seed formation. Put the stages into the correct order. The first one has been done for you. So they've already told you that pollination happens first. What will be next?
Fertilization.
Fertilization. Well done. So that's B. What then?
Seed formation.
Seed formation, which is D. And then? Seed dispersal, which is A. Well done. Seeds can be dispersed in many different ways. Why is it important for seeds to be dispersed?
Well, it decreases the competition between seeds of survival.
Fantastic. Okay, what competition would there be among seeds? So, what is the competition that we find among plants?
It's for water.
Water, minerals, sunlight, carbon dioxide. So all the stuff that's needed for photosynthesis and growth, space. Okay, all of that is factors that will influence or that will create competition among them. Okay, so there's another thing that you can mention. So we want to decrease competition. But why else do we want to have the seeds dispersed? Yes, let's say all the cactus plants, let's go back to the cactus, just grows in this little one section of the whole province, okay? And then there's a fire and it kills all the cactus plants. But if the cactus plants were dispersed and there was another colony about a kilometer away, the fire would have missed them and then they could have survived. So it's definitely a survival skill. The more spread out you can have them, the better the chance of survival. Okay, if all grows together and there's a disease that come in there, it's going to affect all of them. But if they spread out, the ones that's further away won't get the disease. Okay, is it making sense?
Yeah.
Okay, this is just for 1 mark, so you just needed to mention one thing. I'm just giving you guys different options. Okay, here are some pictures of different seeds. So here's a dandelion, then there's maple seeds, there's date seeds, there's sandburr seeds, coconut, and lotus. The coconut and the lotus seeds are dispersed by floating on water. This is because they are light and they're filled with air. Okay, the coconut and the lotus. So basically it's the outer one with the stuff in it, and inside they've got a lot of air so they can float on the water. Okay, so that's their adaptation to float on water and to be dispersed. Complete the sentences. Dandelion and maple seeds are dispersed by, so here's your dandelion and the maple. What would they be dispersed by?
Wind.
Well done. Why?
They are wind pollinated plants.
Okay, but why? If you look at them, what adaptation have they got so that the wind will be able to blow them about?
The seeds are light.
They light, and what is this form? Wings, yes. Okay, so they light in weight and they've got wings. So the wind can pick them up and go and drop them somewhere else. Well done. Okay. Okay, so the dandelion and maple seeds are dispersed by wind. This is because they are lightweight and they've got wings. The date and the sandburr seeds are dispersed by animals. Okay, here we've got the sandburr and here we've got the date. So they are dispersed by animals. For both seeds, suggest how this happens. So how will the date seed be dispersed by animals? Yes, so they will eat it. It's a nice fruit. And then the seed goes out with the excretion and it will fall on the ground on a different place and it can grow there. Well done. How will the sandburr be dispersed?
It will stick to the fur of the animal.
Yes, it's going to stick to the hair or the fur of the animal, and when the animal goes and rubs itself against the tree at another spot or something like that, then that will come off and it will fall onto the ground and it will be dispersed into another area. So well done there. Okay. Any questions? Any questions in general that you guys have? Questions about the exams, question about what the exam looks like, anything else? We've now done the questions that I took out for today. So now you guys can ask me any other questions you've got.
Okay.
Sorry? Okay, no questions.